Perfect. So, dinner we all welcome everyone. Amarasta we all adores. Thank you all so much for coming. I thought this is going to be a performance of works in Cornish written by the Kernewek Writers Club that has been meeting monthly for a few months now. All Agankano Avid in Kernewek, all of our poems will be in Cornish, but we'll be sort of working through the evening a little bit in English just to sort of facilitate a little bit of understanding who's going where. And after each participant, we are going to be sort of opening up the floor, as it were, to discussion of any of the poems, any of the content that has just been performed by each respective participant. So if you have any particular comments you'd like to make, any questions you'd like to ask, if you'd like to sort of delve into one of our poems in particular, then wait until the end of each participant's sort of full performance and we will absolutely get there. Right, Dinarthis Gem in Wed. Sorry, just before we start, I just wanted to let you know, if it's okay, we will be recording the session.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to turn my video off.
Perfect. Go right ahead. Splan. Okay, so yes, we've got 5 poets lined up for you tonight. In some instances, I'm using poet very, very loosely. Mez in Nevkaz. So yes, I would like to kick off the night, if you all don't mind, with 2 poems, relatively short poems that I have written. Ankinza Khan, the first poem, yw Henwys Tol. Tol waroenep, my tefer an gos, nifina visaw am glewis yn teg. In meddan lather nireta chantia, didis prefi mi awardhim pain hweg. Mesito an jif my cafaf meanwharth in Gwedermires a der trunk ddagro. Mathwaraf pas a votas crefa durwarth agona, hath tagath erio. Annesa yw Henwys Afon. Mir wel Afon a drif the len am dewlagas the ges. Ben in deg han north a vir o'r thief prest o quisca enep a hefel dhimo. Ha Kewsel o'r thief dre erio a den hi am impinion. Ha gyd lefer hi ithas wonen in hen fewnans, tremin trwedd o lamma a ddiwarneddi, Cepar del ddefa petalis ros gwyn hag ama cref ddim, a'i minas heb ken. Crenyw roth hi horf, hi diwfron ha'i clwn a stwmsa in dan gamporano falf, taf meddwl ha clis. Ith istyn war tu hag untenewen o gwelf in wethus hi diwad fiflew. Mea warren ta in pols desempus nafyd hi bythqueth fent yn a fewnans megis a berthini. An pith a ddyrthim a bleg hidew was a der lenter hidew lagas warm tel. Ithiw bitterle neb genesigeth. Me a ros there the bewnans, mae hala hi om ddisgweddus a fel afon Clare in cres don a nos. Hai atili ddim. Hai ni ol Kenneth. Thank you. So yeah, does anyone have any particular sort of questions, comments, anything about the poem, about the writing at all?
Maybe Cam, Ragantus Nagos Kernewek. So for those who don't speak lots of Cornish, you could give some background into what the poem's meant to you.
Silly question, silly idea. So Tol and Aven are 2 sort of relatively short poems about the trans experience overall. Tol is particularly about the experience of adjusting your appearance and shaving, quite specifically, about the instant in particular in which you sort of nick yourself shaving and you bleed a little bit. And it's intended to be a little sort of commentary on the small actions that you would sort of undertake as a trans person to fit an appearance that you might want to do, while people are sort of trying constantly to disparage you on the other side. People who say, for example, in Metheven ladder nireta changia, di disprevi mi awardin pine hweg. The killer says you will never change. To disprove them, I give myself sweet pain, because these are things that you will continue doing. You can pull a hair, you can cut yourself shaving, you can, you know, bleed and walk around with scratches and holes on your face and all of this sort of thing. And it will neither stop you nor discourage you from continuing to do it, and will really sort of act against what other people say about you never being able to change. You can change yourself in lots of ways, and they can mess you up occasionally, but you'll still go ahead and do them. And Aven is about having a sort of vision of ideal self, really, having a vision of what it is that you would want to become, what it is that you want to transform into, and having a vision of the kind of person that would look back on your experiences. Here, tremin truedo lama di warnedi, with a look of pity jumping off of her, as though the person that you will turn into will sort of look back at the difficult experiences and, you know, look back on you in a sort of positive way, in a way that says, I'm sorry for what you went through. And basically just having the realization of what it is that you want to turn into, and the idea that what you will turn into will be beautiful and will be some kind of perfection in a way, because that's what you really want. So any particular questions on any of this?
I just wanted to say that was beautiful, Cam, and don't disparage yourself like you did at the beginning by saying you're not a poet, because that was a very poetic explanation, if nothing else.
No, well,
whereas
the guitar. So if there's nothing in particular anyone would like to sort of comment on, ask about, or anything, perfectly fine. We can move on to our next participant, excitingly. And ito nesa ragoninos ma ima Liano Krithia. Liane will be performing. And by play, go ahead, tell us what you've got. Yeah.
Miraz. Yeah, hello, Liana V. I'm Liane. Hello. I'll just launch sort of straight into it, really. So the first poem is the first poem I ever wrote in Cornish, and it's called Gwrythyans, which is a play on words that I'm going to ruin by explaining it. So Havizi is one of the words in Cornish for tourist, but it literally means summer people, and Gwrythyans is winter people. So that's that. And I wrote it in the rhyming structure of the Ordinalia, which is one of the oldest, the oldest texts I think that we have in Cornish. Okay. Ia lenk an holsplan all, ni alav perthi an col, nilin mos mes an hav. Ha panvo an tretho gwag, ha gillis arta an plag, vin nag ugesis sau gwav. just a short one. So I'm hoping I've ordered these in a kind of flow. So the next one was written shortly after that last year in the summer, just when it was unbearably hot. And it's called Ton Res. Clos uangis ke parha brech ha castle o clena. Pause, poster o cuntal war grogan dano, an ebron ag an chi, and tau kinzi the viscara in pols a daran, ha mio cortos and hagar owl hueg, cales, cuv, a radevera yender guitis warnani. So a bit of a more recent one now. This is, I think, the most recent one on my list. It's barely 10 days old, and it's about beach bodies. So it is fittingly called Corf Treth. I harmir rule vos rhaid cafos Corf Treth in Havma, mesoesker in a lever. In delov syllabris, nimbus Corf Treth, Trethavi, Evan, Igor, Tom, te winnow o Thor o te winya and whole, poleno cellulit o morthos, namo keskeris warnav vel cregin, tast hollan, scridge golan, gwylth ha perfaith. So on from, I guess, physical health to mental health now. This poem was written a couple of weeks ago about missing your meds. It is called Vegneth Phyllis. Cosca plum a rug rag oars, colches and bed thou fel rose, dor sigar gans alcan pause, seen vith the vunen zino gauze, eskern gwadden, keeg doors, pegn kellis, pignon laws. They're mostly all quite short, these, so we're kind of banging through them, but yeah. On a similar sort of mental health medication sort of mental health kick. The next one is probably a bit, don't know, it's a bit teenager, but we'll do it anyway. So this one, I'll leave this one go because hopefully it might come across, but if it doesn't, you can ask me about it at the end and I won't mind telling you. It is called Gwrythyans. And scoran ma yw marrow, gwel yw hi threchi the ves. Ni ra del noedd agina warneddi, ni ra iddyn tira warneddi, ni ra hi neithi po dineithi, rag own a vaga ulis. And then one more short one before we get to one that actually has some length to it. I can do it, I promise. Tam Melder is written about my sister, who, bless her, is the most lovely human in the world. And sadly, just life has not been particularly kind to her. And so this is about that. O hwar hagu gwynenon, mi a white bisvican, ifydd yn liha, gwisgis da sugra, war tiwedd, in diwedd, hanafas dafivnans. The metaphor, I'm just going to point out because there's no way any of you could know this. My sister drinks cups of tea by putting, if she can get away with it, about 5 sugars in and not stirring it and just leaving it to kind of form a layer of syrup at the bottom and then drinking it like a bee. It's great. I think I've got time actually to do a couple, I think, quickly. Yeah. All right, I'll do this one very quickly because if nothing else, it's an advert for a really good book that isn't my book. This is Paul Hodges' new poetry book, and it's very, very excellent. There's lots of really basic poems in here that make you think, hey, I could do that. And there is a poem in it called Kegin and Bees, which is essentially about how all the Celtic languages are various kitchen implements sort of lying around, kind of slightly gathering dust as things that you bought, and they're kind of there now. And it was really good, and it made me think a lot. And in it, Cornwall is a milk jug that is longing for a time before fridges. So I wrote a kind of response to that because it made me feel a kind of way. So this one is called Was I Kegin and Be Scans Paul. Ima in Kegin, podic leth and yeth, ha news rag Kelil. Kelil vichen rag curs, pon pithes, Kelil brasser rag keeg. Ni rug banne dotje sur, heb lin gwyn an vlas, heb a news as a gans o kins. Mes mi a weith o helil in o, ha Paris of the drechi. I legally cannot go into what I will cut.
For after the whole session.
Yes. The final one is called Das Perchenegi, which means to reclaim, I guess. I kind of shoved that word together. And it was written for an anthology, which should be coming out hopefully this summer or maybe a little later, I think in the summer. My friend Katrin is here and is in it as well, so that's going to be great. And it's about belonging and identity, and it is probably going to be called Belonging with the B in brackets, but we haven't quite finalized it. But the idea of that is all the poets are sort of from different places originally, or they have different languages that they know, and all the poems in it are written in the native language and translated into English, or some of them are written into English and translated. You get the idea. So this one is about my idea of belonging and identity, I guess, or one of them. Mia alsa biwa mil vlethen in Tavis ma. Kins me the goth he. In the verer, nira nevra dos mas the davis re here, mes o thavis you. Leevan, sita kov, my halov and mistinini, kipara radenan o sankrulia, dil ra o thavis o mistin pale. Tavis paran here lore, regul pons dres vorio, hatruzi cans vladinio. Tavis, my hra ilo, rolio, wargan, morebo, hagan karchina, hagan diwana. Hagitho das junia genzi, mamdra, mamieth, kepara, guias, terena tan angolon. Tevi aethid in garden rulis. Istin love hadra hevel dorn, lenwell lester ire in skevens. Biwa knoweth. Yeah, that's me. That's my set.
Applause. Oh, Marissa, Julianne, that was a lot of emotion contained in a short time. That was
we did
really
a gamut, huh?
Yeah, right. Itho, Govino, Campolo, questions, comments, lots of material to get through there.
Listening to the two poets so far, I have to say there's been a sort of change of gear between how Cornish poetry was when I started, which is over 50 years ago, because of course we'd all learned it from the page and only gradually got the opportunity to speak, whereas now you get the greater sense of a sort of vernacular flow. You know, this is something which came flowing quite unheedingly and quite uninhibitedly, but has been brought under control and put and channeled into a particular direction. Is that a fair view, or is it a way of being?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that I think Cornish is really entering an age now where, as you mentioned earlier, we had a chat earlier, didn't we? And you mentioned that it's sort of trying to think of the English for what you said in Cornish, but kind of out of control almost. It's not being, there's no one person controlling it, and there's no group of people controlling it. And I think that there are now enough speakers that you couldn't possibly know everyone or know everyone well, and you couldn't possibly really keep track of everything going on, really. And I just think that's great. This is where the language, I think, really starts to come alive and do its stuff. So yeah, I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah, because I remember, just going back a bit, Gwen and I were on the train to Trora, and she was about 9, I think, and we were sort of chatting about this and that, and I noticed the chap the other side, suddenly noticed the other side of the island in the carriage was sort of looking at us strange, and said, you know, said, "Gaff them, is that where Kewsel Kernewek?" It was Paul Hodge, and he said he was afraid that he'd been hallucinating. But now, I mean, nowadays I wouldn't risk a private conversation in public in Cornish, in Cornwall.
Oh, it's not really so much of a secret language anymore, I suppose. No. But what I mean, I suppose this is something that would be really interesting to hear from all of our performers here tonight as well. What do you think, everyone, about this widening appreciation and prominence, and I don't know, I don't really necessarily want to say tolerance or anything, because that seems a bit silly, but what do you all think that effect has on your writing and your inspiration, your motivation to write and publicize your works?
Yeah. Personally, for me, I don't think it's made a difference, because I'm so new in the language that it's only ever really been this way for me. And also, I was going to act exactly like this, whether it was or not. So,
yeah, I mean, that's been my experience. I mean, I've been writing. I mean, it's over 50 years now. And if anyone asks me why, I've sort of 2 answers loaded. Why not? And also because I can't stop. Yeah. But I have to say that the more I hear the language, the more I find that words and expressions I've heard are being sort of woven in. I mean, like everybody else, I have a particular way of writing, but there's more and more of what I hear being woven into it. That the Cornish is now becoming a colloquial language properly for the first time in, well, I mean, it began to change in the 70s, but it is now beginning to come to the stage where the colloquial language is beginning to dominate. And that's bound to change the way anybody writes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Hamarasta Julianne. Yay, one more round of applause. Perfect. Okay, and our next performer up tonight, Aganesa Gwrythyr Uzi o Gwrythyhaneth Aviv. Sam Marfleg, go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Gwrythyr Apub, Cerbos Nebas Hanachwe Orth o Aswan, Sam of E. So, good evening all, Gwrythyr Da. I'm sure most of you, some of you know me, have seen me lurking about online. I'm usually sort of there, but not doing much. So I, interestingly, sort of adding on to the sort of the brief conversation you just had about the use of Cornish, because of how I learnt the language. So I learnt Cornish from books like Tim did, but I learnt it more as well by translating other poetry into Cornish. And by doing that, I learned how to write poetry in Cornish. And that's how I've ended up here, 10 years later, sort of with a set list for the gods, I'm going to call it. It's going to go down in history, I hope.
Obviously.
So, Panrigni Mechikins, Mia Rubgovin is age restrictions in a. And so I sort of said, do we have any age restrictions when we meet tonight? Can I sort of have free will, because I want to put some more adult themes in? I don't know how adult they really are. I don't know how spottable they are, but I put them in there. I know they're there, and now you know they're there, and you're going to have to try and spot them if you think you might be able to find them, but I will also give explanations as to what's going on mostly. So I've got 4 main poems I want to be reading to you tonight. All of them are based around Well, from my experience as a gay man, I guess, because it's Pride Month still, we're going towards the end of it now. I spent all day yesterday in Bangor, North Wales Pride, which was absolutely fantastic. And I feel like it's just something nice to be able to share loads of different parts of my identity in one way. The poems aren't all necessarily light-hearted. I mean, there's only 4. And I think, as well as that, I'm going to go for the record today of the newest poem, as I've got one on here that I wrote this morning. I did spend about 2 hours trying to edit it after we had our conversation earlier, so we'll come to that. That was the last one. I'm going to read it in a little bit. So the first one, it is called "And Cabaret Queer," the queer cabaret. And I wrote this one over a period of about 2 months, or the most recent 2 months, I should call it, because it is also a newish poem. Thanks to listening to sort of music that was sort of inspired by jazz scenes and things. I sort of thought of this idea that queer cabarets have always been a thing. Like, you think cabaret, you think queer. And it's something that I think is especially lost in modern Britain, especially in Wales, especially in Wrexham, where I am based. There's no real queer lifeline. And it would be nice to be able to bring it back. And I know there's been, for example, there's one gay bar in Swansea and that's shut down. And it's the idea that the queer cabaret is disappearing, and I want to bring it back, even if it is just as a poem. So this is "And Cabaret Queer." In my morgen lagas, a losgin chweg, had duran wan, near well tus teg. O kelwell them gans bezies here, o de gemeres biz igathir. Gans Beerlands cot hag am them of, lovan amolado, hagenzieth av. Luio can a or haglas, raw hagwenon am kemeras. O biz o troilia in tall and conin, ha parasavi ragan govin, a vinoch we donzia asir lel, po au gwel genoch Kewsel in sempel. Qui rebuama rag pub oars, o caroli in holsplan, o cuther in laws. North in anlor, heb chons nacha, me a hembron care than le a stedder. Ran hanochwi o tiller sallow, redurth and a perts gans conved anzo. Junioch, vetchoch, genen hag orthin, as onoch, goddoch, ha bedoch ran. Im a welcome oma, rag person gweer, o cool telu knoweth in cabaret queer. I'm hoping that was enjoyable. Miraculous.
Yes, it was.
I'm also enjoying the silent applause that I can see on the screen. Like, that is splan, and there's going to be a poem coming from that somewhere as well, I think.
We should start encouraging some snap applause just for the fun of it.
So I'm aware that I can ramble for forever, so I'm going to try and get as quickly into my next poem as possible. This one is darker. So Nans yw mis hanebes mi eth the cur in pozos ragan jyd gans coeth. Hahani in cur mi awelas do person warren stretton gans microphone in un level buzz. Buzz ketreidal wrong. So I went to Chester about a month and a half ago with a friend for the day. And we were walking down the high street, and there was a pair of rather old chaps shouting into a microphone, going on about how homosexuality was wrong. It was against God. But they also said that evolution was wrong. And I kind of looked at them and thought, well, it can't have been right if you came out of the same gene pool as me. However, it did inspire me to write a couple of poems. One is the complete opposite of what these people are. And one is sort of more of how I relate to them in a way. So I'm going to start with the one of how I relate to them, and we're going to go on to then sort of pulling away from who they are. And I called it Neb Termin in Duville do Warnogans, sometime in 2022. New Keth, Turs a Warrenella Hagon Gloes, Trau mar Gomplek na Iller Displegia, and Dondro around Leza. New Keth, in Ungara Ufar in forth my car, Den ha Greg ha Buggle ha Hez. Quiu Keth, the fourth Goth na Wartralia, po Gaza Hehon in the Vos Truzes. Gans forth Arel po tres estron. If o fortav war o hins, o holian lurch the diller or benic vith. O cana o han hagos loes, orth elo and bees. Mes dortoch ni the sau scorn. Rag fui na war sau kaz igas colon. Hani u keth. And I know that the Kernewek amongst you picks up on the wordplay on keth. for Keth means both the same, but it also means trapped or bound. And if you're in the LGBT scene, you might know that Kethneth has a special meaning in Cornish. I'm not going to explain any further, and I'm going to move swiftly on. So this next one, yeah, is called Bestes in Norse, Beasts in the Night, and it's the Gwrythyans. It is the exact opposite of what these people represent. These people who I saw on the street representing hatred, and this sort of represents looking at people and thinking how wonderful they are, but also being the most awkwardly, introvertedly weird person who will just look at them, smile, wave, and then run away to the other side of the bar and have a few too many drinks. So Bestes in Norse, Beasts in the Night. An earth vil ma yw gwr hagel, I enep ith yw gorm, hag e veref nins yw gwel, I leb yw afel garm. Tom hag leb hag lysec yw, ha rust hag garwyd gorff, ni fy hem y gris gans dw, mis gans clywans porth. Best and cause nag yw gwelys, a drig yn misgan po. In I le e mirothys, ha fwath an lado. It's short, it got there quickly, didn't it? You didn't expect that.
Well, I wanted you to go on, but
that one may well get extended at some point. So imachons if it ends. So we'll return. We'll do a return to Bestes in Norse at some point.
yeah, but this is the order text.
Yeah. If it moi, hamira screef moi, like Avel Leveris and Rema u Bardhonieth knoweth, or fan knoweth u in D. So they're all brand new poems that are so hot that they're burning my laptop as I have the paper on top of them. So we got one left. This one is, I don't know how to describe it. I've been playing a lot with an AI recently that makes pictures, and I can't stop, and I find it the most entertaining thing in the world. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen it in my stories almost every 5 minutes, and I'm not apologizing for that, but I am going to apologize for what I typed in earlier, which is, if man designed the penis. And there's an image to go with this poem that I'm not going to share with anyone tonight, because that is not, no. But it did inspire a poem, and I'm going to read you the poem, and then we'll be finished. So I've called it Bonans. This is an incredibly working title, considering the poem is about 9 hours old. Bonans means life. And it's written as a bit of a conversation between a group of people, sort of like we would do in our writing sessions, sitting around and chatting about things. Bonans. Cymeron Hema. Hevel meddwl, ha Gwethek, ha coint. Ys gans o porpus. Im res a gutha, im res a geles, im a meth. Mes nins as meth pan von nurth. Mes pandra ra. Pith a ddefnyddio fa. Tanwaith, leifio, hirgosk. Oh. Ni fynd I fi godfos. Mornas. Ninsa's voice header. That is the end. It sort of finishes on a nice ... And I'm gonna just stop talking now. Miraz though.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Pyrdam rasta jisa masu and rena kind of take. Itho. Right. Any opening the floor? Closing the floor. Excellent. Lovely. That's what you like to hear.
Can I ask Sam something? Take up a remark he made about translation. Now, of course, translation is an experience which just about every literature has gone through. Taking things from what's regarded as a classical body of literature. For example, if we look at how Cornish developed, our classical literature sort of involves translations of biblical texts, of legends, and all sort of woven into verse and sort of set in our here and now. This is true in general. Can I ask Sam how it's in detail it's affected his writing?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm going to be as concise as I can be without going on for too long, because this is something that I might end up having to do a whole different talk about, because the translation itself started not with poetry, although I did venture into that very quickly, but it started with stories from my childhood that I used to read. So I had a big copy of Thomas the Tank, and so you start with something like that, which is very, it seems simple on the surface, and then you look at it and every other sentence is in a different tense and there's a very different way of writing, and you're looking at it as a learner of Cornish thinking, I know how to say Mia, Ra, Kewsel, Kernewek, and you have to sort of try and then sort of say things like, golly, said Thomas as he shunted the coaches up the hill towards the station with lots of puffs, and you think, oh my days. So I moved quickly away from that towards poetry, thinking it would be easier, and I started picking up poems that I liked. And I went for things, for example, Edgar Allan Poe is one of my favorite poets. I just love Gothic writing. I love the darkness that he brings to it. And I think that translating a lot of sort of Victorian era poetry to begin with, especially, there's plenty to find online. It's given my poetry much more of a dark edge, I think, that it would have had if I just started translating maybe romance poetry straight away, or something a bit more modern. I think it's given me a bit of a, I don't want to call it Gothic, because I don't think it comes across as Gothic in a sense, but this sort of descriptive non-person, like I try not to write in the first person as much. It's something I'm really experimenting with these days.
Because I remember a while ago now, I just sort of found an experiment. Could you render into Cornish Raina Maria Rilke's Der Panter? And I expected you'd come up with something about a fortnight later, and you'd done it the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's turned into an annoying skill in a way. I can translate quite quickly into Cornish. It's interesting. I think this is how the poetry becomes such a big part of who I am these days. So whenever I'm feeling a bit stressed, or I'm feeling like I've got something to get out, whether it's good or bad, I will just grab a pen or grab my phone and I'll write down something, and it always comes out, no matter what, in Cornish. And after that, it's other languages come first. I've written more in German than in English in the past 10 years, and then over that, Cornish is like 99% of what I'm writing. And when it all comes back to when I was learning the language, I decided that I wanted to expand the lexicon a bit, to expand what we can read, which I have published, because a lot of what I wrote needs to be gone over now that I can actually speak Cornish. So hopefully that sort of, in brief, answers your question without meeting up too much everybody else's time.
That's very illuminating.
Raz.
The way I'm Sam. Then let's get swiftly on. Agan Nessa Gwrythyr, I thought, Avid Tim Mark Plague. And Tim, go ahead and Gomen, tell us a bit about yourself.
Right. I've been sort of writing in Cornish for over 50 years now. I became sort of fluent not long after I started to write, and Cornish has been the language of my oil is my hearth ever since. And my daughters Gwen and Annie sing in Cornish from time to time, and our lad Myrion knows the language as well. And a lot of the rhymes I've written were for them when they were little, and I now write rhymes in Cornish for Nico, my grandson, Gwen's little boy. But those are for him, so you won't be hearing any of them tonight. This first poem, The Go of Kerry, is about Kerry, whom I met 25 years ago. And it's sort of two verses of thanks to her for all the things she gave. She was very witty, she was very funny, she wrote stories, poems, essays, delicately malicious blogs. She loved food, travel, reading, gin. She hated managerialism, suits. If you look at her blog, you can see not very deeply coded attacks on what's going wrong with education and the library service generally. And we lost her last year, and this has two short lines refrain at the beginning. A throw you all mi aras, for Dan Colin, a Bardhas, for all your gifts I thank you through fire of heart and poetry, and just thanks her for all these things. And Yes, ath roi o ôl mi a ras, Brydan coddod na bardas. Ath lafar o ffreth a ffeil, ath anal flydd y coser. Ath ober cref y compes, ath chwerthin trom a dor pes. Ath crefft dar bari sosten, ath flas warwari a plen. Ath nel ter yn pisado, ath ewl trosia lies pow. Ath roi o wôl mi a ras, Brydan coddod na bardas. Yn sgys rith yn golsta ben, a byblydyn ha gailen. A wan ysblydion ha gwydd, a ront y biwnans newydd, a ddilitiau'n bes dof, a sgrifa erbyn angodd. A'n fflores na godd yn be, gyffewi ac unigedd. Questions? Comments? Criticisms, corrections, complaints?
Metheven is just leferol to Miraz arana henna. It was Bardhonieth mar splan ha learn Kerenza ha henu pura purs and Miraz these.
Come Orestes.
Yeah. 0 out of 10 made me cry.
Right, can I move on to the next one?
Ath once, Cain Rag.
Yeah, to Lord. This is another memorial poem written on request. I don't know if you remember Paul Turner, great Cornish film director. His film Hail the Wind, about a Welsh poet who was killed in the First World War, got an Oscar nomination. And his wife, Sue Roderick, the actress, who the other side of Offa's Dyke, people may remember her from a spell she was doing on Coronation Street. She currently plays Cassie in Pobl y Com. Anyhow, one of the things about Paul, he was sort of stuck for promotion in the BBC, because he found out afterwards he'd fallen victim to the BBC's version of Berufsverbot. And he was quite delighted when he found out, because he'd started to worry he might not be any good. So when S4C started, he went out and started producing on his own bat. And every one of the different kinds of people, craftspeople involved in filmmaking, the audio people, the camera operators, the casting directors, that they all said that he understood their particular discipline than any director they'd ever met. So, and one of the things he understood, that film is above all a picture, maybe a moving picture, but it can be a portrait or a landscape, but it is a picture. So I called this. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to the funeral because Kerry was in hospital at the time, but one I read it out. It's called Weader Schizo, the Weaver of Shadows. And it describes how Paul, he says, I won't be captive, I won't let the earth hold me captive. The pictures I created will live after me. I've always hated the lies. I've loved truth, and I've loved beauty, and I've loved life. Nim cethyr yn graw pan wyaf sgizo, the fil wir heb woe. Go ddim cas bisbedd, mi a ffeth diwedd, pan yr is gwel na hen. Heddi ni ran cler, ins astel tecter, prest y tir an tel. That's written in the a particular Cornish England measure. It's called the Byzantine. It's got 15 syllables, 5 syllables in each line, 1 rhyme, the first one unaccented, middle one, first one stressed, middle one unstressed, last one stressed. What could be easier? Once you get the hang of them, then more or less write themselves. I think, as well as sort of the longer works like the Ordinaria, Cornish also does of the short sort of England type verse form, which can be funny, it can be raucous, it can be movie, it could be anything you want. And I think one of my aims here has been to make the haiku look garrulous. Right. Anyone? Can I move on to the next one?
You may, yeah. We'll take questions when you're done. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. On Isolt Arad, the other Isolt, a lot of people forget that in the legend of Tristan and Isolt, eventually Tristan had to leave Cornwall, go to Brittany, and his great friend Dinan said, "Well, now you settled down, you ought to marry my sister, who was also called Isolt." And Tristan in his heart was still faithful to his original Isolt, and happened one day that his wife Isolt and her brother were crossing a river and on horseback, and the water splashed up above her knee, and she said woefully, "That is higher than any man's hand has ever reached." And the whole tale came out, and Dinan went to Tristan and asked him, "What the hell's going on here?" And this is just tells the story from the other Isolt's point of view. She's saying, you know, she loved Tristan dearly, but she, as far as he was concerned, she just didn't seem to exist. Hi o yn Isolt arall, o cara Tristan heb ffal. Heb hun ei groeth drin nos, a gortos yn un wartos, I anal war godna gwas, an gŵr nebas priosas. Hi o yn Isolt arall, a'i chorff mae ffenna, neb mal. Selas warto yn Tardydd, hydd coth yn golwg newydd, I drem wartu a gorwel, rag na fi, irydd heb cael. Hi o yn Isolt arall, serch lun I cholon o gwal. Chroen tom lyf wŵr nas taf, gwynt yn cryth, naw ein cynia. Tremat sgath heb gwynt sy'n goi, sgath coi war fôr o iain fôr. Hi o yn Isolt arall. Hi o yn Isolt arall. And this last one is called Nos a Niwl, Night and Fog, which is a historical allusion to, Sam will remember this one, Nacht und Nebel, which is what the Nazis promised to anybody who opposed her. And it's inspired by some things that has happened recently, but although it's not specifically a narrative about an individual person, the woman in the narrative, she's a journalist. She gets a lot of trolling, a lot of threats online. She's gone out to meet her boyfriend one evening, and while she's on the way to meet him, some yob spots the badge he's wearing and yells abuse at her. When the pair have to scuttle away out down a side street to avoid trouble. She gets into work one day, her computer screen is locked, her terminal pay is in an envelope, but she's told to clear her desk. A couple of days later, she's addressing a meeting, an unmarked car turns up, she's grabbed and taken away before anyone can do anything. She disappears, and she's eventually found lifeless somewhere in the woods. It's got Nos a Niwl, gans Tardydd y Dyffinas, a testena serch fi gwas, lengi te, gwan sgrif a sgrôl, wrth i'n predeg cas penfol, nena fistynedd yn hwyl, Hiro hill torn a gorwel, yn troen chi war hi lam, venem a fros a'i scram. En gwynton at y hwylaf, medd y chwel was yn gwal. A tofyn troen eberel, o lir, o lam anichel. Y Seythen mes i'n noswaith, scaf y ger drysgys o laeth, sy'n wrth cas war I thog glan, do glywyc o fros a can. Teirir gans gwas y geri, polstryth a larg dy ddau. A hins dy dre, os lef crin o cria mewl war I sy'n. Yn gwynton at y hwelaf, medd y chwel was yn gwal. Y tofyn tro yn eberel, o lir o laman uchel. Ot heb gwarn o gres unis, alchwedes sgram I defys. Ffyn I gobern i'r maelier, bydd iain ddi esgyrn bys mer. Mes yn stret panfaglas, di herddiod colog bras, geirio ges the gystrewi, a hen gas warned I hun, in gwainton at y chwelaf. Mi ddechwel was yn gwa. A tof yn tro yn ebran, holir o la manichen. Bagas ai chyweth y leil am gyntelas heb cael, the glywes lafar I lef war cas a gorthrich a gre. Ot leo cria gans nerth dechesi warned yn serth. Fist a patia gwesgel a ffesi am des yn gwel, yn gwainton at y chwelaf. Mi ddechwel was yn gwaf. A tof yn tro yn ebran, holir o la manichen. In more than chi a tethons di dawn a whale hag yn hons. Is in nos sanil gans torth, tros cras am bondo roes porth. Was a mis ni as profias, war fi'n lanner in coes glas, cigiau, diw lagas heb gweil, dolo brith dryn bar I chel. In gwaintan at y chwelaf, mi a ddechwel was yn gwad, a tofyn tro yn ebrad, ôl ir, o la man I chel. What's
Festa, pur deg. That was amazing. Marastaji, Tim. So yes, we can now take a few questions and comments about Tim's poems, Mars, Uzi, the Nabona, if anyone has them. If you don't mind, I will actually start off with one. Yeah. So in Anisalt Aro,
yeah,
obviously it, you know, to anyone who is particularly familiar with yourself and your work, we obviously know that you are multilingual, in particular with Cornish and Welsh. I noticed that you used the word as priosas, which is, I believe, taken from Welsh specifically. So what effect do you think it has using this particular word that was borrowed in from Welsh rather than using as demedas, for example?
Right, now, prias, the word is in the ordinary, in the vocabulary in Cornicum. And it's a loan from Latin, privatus. And the reason I use it, so Demethi has got a wider meaning. It sort of includes sort of the betrothal. And the word prias, because you see Gwr prias, Benem prias, and so on, and the word is known. It has a particular legal significance. And as far as Tristan is concerned, this marriage is a purely legal matter. It has no emotional, it has no physical significance for him. And of course, it comes from privatus, something private. Of course, prias, the word prias, it's meant to include both members of the couple. But as far as he's concerned, it excludes its other result. And this is the cause of the pain she has to live.
Fantastic, thank you. Right, anybody else before we head to our final performer of the night? Excellent. No, we're dying for this next one. We're absolutely just ready for Ithel Marpleg. One more round of applause, please, for Tim. Hamarasta Giata, per favor. Ena Ithel Grenni Gorfena Nos Kano Gans Taran Marpleg. Let's get to Taran. Ha Clewis Temikin Lagever. Tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, good to do a da. On an hagol. Taranov, Hana you Taran. Huedlo ha Barth Gama ovi. I'm a storyteller and a shout poet, a spoken word poet in English. And I use Cornish and English for things I do. I do translation for poetry and things like that too, and a variety of various things, vaguely professionally. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. It's great to be with you all and hear such lovely words so far. I've got a few poems to share with you all tonight, and I'll start with one that's in a book. I like bringing it out because it's a nice prop. However, you may not buy them. They're not available for sale, so it's not a particularly useful prop, but it's nice to hold a book. Makes me feel special. There will be an anthology of modern Cornish poetry coming out this summer, which has a few Cornish language poems, including one from me, and I believe one from Tim as well, and a few other people. So there will be some more available later on. But for now, here's one. This was produced to celebrate the Ordinalia being returned for a short amount of time, but being returned nonetheless. And it was a response to the theme of homecoming, Dwellens. And so I wrote this about kind of how I felt about this particular homecoming. It's called Igen Cachin, Around Us. Tre yw cilch Igen Cachin, ni ilyn ni dreheddes an amal. Ima cadorio carec enna, rag miriorion the welles and helch. Ninzas gweres a the worth a ves then kilch. Itho, ima edum them grath a vesura ag a honnen. Crevda a golon hag anaz. Here dear a walls hag owen. Pelda then pen and taves, uchelda ag a thristis. Tre a dhons ig an kirchen, tros a uch tros, love in love, me assay, mes I triol. I always trip up on that. Troilionzi, the vers the worth o do love. O chwilas rag confeddes, cystav celis in dren edyn, cyscawso, gerio o tyddi in erch a linio pel gawsa, han haga awel a brez, completh bis pan na fo, ni aswonin vi tre, bis pan risa tre o godfos. Whereas, as Sam mentioned earlier, it is Pride Month, so I have the poem that I do for that. It was written during the G7 in response to what some members of the sort of Cornish queer community wanted to say to the leaders that were around in regards to environment, identity, queerness, and it's called Ninza's Goth in Kesteven. There's no pride in concrete. Mar ni ilachwi cara denzes, fatal ilachwi cara and beers. Ninzu an gweres an grond a honi e thol mes lei heb gweres, u lei heb savla. Kepar hageneth, ime edum dagen bees a vos liniel, rag cavos ag an honen o trelia. Ninzu pada an caeth sam gwyddieno a geo groanen creithec, po pen gweth trehis compes gans gino palas so hurthia in mor splan. Marzu and gerio mad isteer, if the drefen agadastu winner da rianzo. Imonzi o conja dres agan tavozo hani o gozel, agan henzio hani o curthes, agan gwith hani oth anella, agan kamenetho hani oth asaya, guntel gans goth, govenek, Hagadenza. Bis panvo ol gessis and gam neves banner lurs on nija the hunter gwen. Marnigen gurthu lemon. Hui avith wrth agan galari duetha. Whereas Hag and Nessa what yeah, and the next one is a poem for my Manwyn's dog, who unfortunately died quite recently. So this is about her. She was a Springer Collie cross called Sterren, which means star. She was black and white, as a true Cornish dog should be, and had a little sort of white star shape on her coat. So that's one of the reasons why she was called Sterren. So this is Rag Sterren for Sterren. The worth and nose ath hennas, ha then nose de welleth, mantel bleu thavel lorgan ha stare, tom, me leno agan min hwartho, ninzosta kozolek, po digoeth, im a cur bora genes, gans all and bonans a wenton, raglemin, diffic and tau, nevra the wadfos and nessa praise, and idin a vith canna arta. Thank you. And I'll finish, I think, on this one, which is this is the poem that will be in the Modern Cornish Anthology from Broken Sleep, which is being released on the 30th of August. There's going to be a launch event, I believe. I don't know if it's public or not, but there will be a launch event in Crescent Kerno at the end of August. And so if that is, if you're allowed to go, then go. If it's a private event, apologies. But yeah, it should be fun. This is a Barth Estrenyon, in the name of strangers. It was written in response to a prompt for a competition that there was for the, I think it was the London Poetry something or other. It was a journal of some kind, and they were looking for poems in languages other than English about England. And so this is my feelings about kind of my experience with the language living in England. I live in Bristol at the moment, living in England, and growing up in Cornwall. As well as, yeah, experience of sort of code switching and things like that. So yeah, it's called A Barth Estrenyon in the Name of Strangers. Neglua vi o lev. Mea well o hanno wan rekno ribbon dadas, kepar del di dhinach. Me drelia the gonis, dastui o hist lev, litherenic o leski kepar ha glasneth. Me a gov ha skol, enna o gano ninzo coeth, ar wascus ini glap, min hwartho gans an son a garno wan forth du, o taseni in o klopen, ni alave perteri in o luyo, Ruth ha gwyn heb ken. Me a geli dens del taves knoweth, hurthia in mes o briansen, me a give and dens ma, kescaris in pon whath. Ev am compel de henwell o mamwyn henwyn and koth, grandma, granny, nan, gerio leveris G begeth nevra, mes y barth istrenion in delere bo. Heddiw in Kernow, ni glwyfi ieth, mes me il regia an alwoddio, han chio o theilw, han hweddlo an tir major hefsons enna, ni a vrath an dod, wrth I fyrcia gans agan dens, rag nefra finitha. In des spit then roll and ray varo, scriffis in tha thorn, me a glua fi o lev, pan mi a gaws. Whereas Braz, hen you all.
Marasta Jean comparec tara nangano fest taking with. Yeah, we just about have time. Sorry, we don't have the time. We're on borrowed time currently, but that's fine. We have time for any sort of comments or questions on Taran's work as well. If my play, Kelvin Rug, if you have any questions.
One thing which is so very nice, and I'm using nice in the strict sense of the word, as in sort of nicely timed. The poem about Sterren, the very first line, and now, Dwrth y Nos, this is sort of from the night, is it's a common expression. Dwrth y Nos, sort of around about nightfall we came. But here you've given it. It's a general expression, a particular meeting, Dwrth y Nos, my Hannes, the night when you were born. Suddenly that makes every memory I've got of having heard the expression different. Was this deliberate?
As usual, if anything is good in poems that I've written, it was 100% deliberate. If it was bad, pure accident.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, if we have no more questions or comments on Taran's work in particular, hen yw all agan burs rago. That is everything that we have for you for tonight. Myras in Kinsa Ledagan Gwrythyorion. Thank you to our performers. Give everyone a big round of applause. You absolutely deserve it, everyone. Ha Myras, the Hui was Loizi. Thank you all so much for coming to watch and for giving everyone your support. If anyone would like to talk about the general sort of experience of our poetry writing in Cornish or of writing more generally, please feel free to stick around and we'll have a little bit of a discussion with everyone. Before you go, I'd like to give everybody the chance sort of through our list to, plug a little bit, get all of your, work sources and socials out there. I know everybody's very sort of online, happy to present all of your stuff. So, well, I'm skipping me politely because I do not really have any place that I've put mine, but watch this space.
I was gonna say, shall I start? Because I've got the general social links as well, so that makes sense. So Kernewek Writers Club, as we mentioned at the start of the call, is monthly, tends to be the third or maybe the last Sunday of each month. That's decided based on a poll essentially, but it's roughly that time every month. So I'll be getting a poll out for the next one very soon. The home of Kernewek Writers Club is Leon Kernow, which is a very excellent Facebook page set up by Sam for just Cornish literature in general, discussion, creation, reading, sharing, all of that stuff. So if you want to join us or if you just want to see what we're doing, that's the link to check out for that. General social stuff for other things we or some combination of us are doing this week for Speak Cornish Week. We have Seythen wherein we're, that's the same link again, Leanne, you got to copy and paste right. We have Seythen wherein we're linen, which is Thursday. Session 1 is at 7 for beginners. Session 2 is at 8 o'clock. These are all British summertime for sort of advanced speakers. Essentially the difference, beginners, we help you out a bit more. We don't mind so much English. No one's going to tell you off for English in the second call, but yeah, a bit more sort of structured. We're theming that session specifically on the theme of Speak Cornish Week, which is of the. Finally, for stuff we're sort of doing on Friday at 4:30 till 7:30 on Taran's Twitch channel, me and Cam and Taran are going to play some Minecraft in Cornish. That'll be fun. So
nothing poetic about that.
Nothing. Well, you never know. We could get a bazontin out of that. And yeah, that's the sort of general socials. I'll just very quickly do me. I'll bung them in chat, but there they are. Essentially, I got a Twitter. You can follow it if you'd like. It is sometimes my poetry and sometimes incoherent shouting. It's a mix. And sometimes just memes about frogs or something. I don't know. I've got a blog there, which is just kind of everything I'm doing with Cornish. Not always quite as I'm doing it, but like a month later I'll go, I should put that on the blog. So that's got some poetry. And finally, there's a link to my Ko-fi there, which if you want to like download any of the things I've like published, like you can also chuck me money if you'd like. You don't have to. It is all available for free except for the physical copies of things. So you don't have to pay any money, because I do not think you should have to access the language. That's me. Sam, I guess next, if we're going down the running order.
Let's do.
You might have noticed I accidentally posted one in the chat already because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing on my keyboard, so I was getting ready to put all my links out there. So if you want to find me on Twitter, I am Kevado on Twitter, as Buchwas Kerno, the Cornwall's cowboy. Sadly, thanks to an issue at work, I have had to make my Instagram private, but that does not mean that people cannot join me on Instagram. I will accept anyone who I know is not under the age of 18 and goes to school where I work. To sum up that story. So I'll pop all my links in there anyway. So on Instagram at the moment, I'm Der Alte Hexenmeister, which is German from a Goethe poem. I will be resynchronizing all my social medias at some point in the summer holidays, but I need to think of what name I want to use for them and how I can do that in a way that will not end up with 13-year-olds following me. I also do have a blog, and the blog has become a bit stagnant over the past year or so. It does not mean it is not going to be updated and revivified at some point. And blog Kernewek, it is full of lots of random things I've written and or translated, mostly poetry. There are some short stories on there. If you look at my original writing in terms of short stories, I do apologize. I'm going to try and make that a bit better. But please enjoy stalking me as much as you want, because I don't work with you, so that's fine.
You. Well, Tim has actually just jumped out, so that's fine. So Taran, Mark, go ahead. Socials, links, plugs.
Yeah, I'm on literally every social media pretty much. Not yet LinkedIn, but I'm doing that very soon. But that's probably nothing you want to be on anyway. So yeah, Kerno Fiction on Twitter, because it's too short to do the Cornish Writer, which I have everywhere else. Yeah, follow me at the Cornish Writer, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch. I stream twice a week, usually doing a bit of games, sometimes storytelling, singing, poetry too. I have a SoundCloud. There's one thing on there at the moment. Actually, is it? No, wait, hang on. I do have a SoundCloud. That's not what I mean. I mean the other thing. What's the other thing?
Bandcamp?
Yes, I mean Bandcamp. I have a Bandcamp where there is a poetic exploration of Cornish identity and brain drain and youth emigration from Cornwall on there at the moment. You can listen to it for free, or you can, donate some money if you wish to support me. But yeah, I have a book coming out next year, so it's like a full year away, so you can't buy that yet. But as soon as, if you like what I do, then follow me on these things and you'll know when that's available, and any other thing that I'm doing. I think that's everything.
Splan. Well, in Kazna.
Briefly want to say, I forgot I should mention, this has been recorded, so when it is, I'll stick it up on various things and you'll be able to find it. If you haven't found it when that happens, just shoot me a message and I can link it to you.
In Kazna. It just leaves to say thank you so much to everyone who's performed tonight, everyone who's come to listen. We really appreciate, you know, both your creative input and your interaction with all of this fantastic art that our community is producing. And, you know, come follow some people, come keep on top of stuff. And make sure that everyone, you check out the Speak Cornish Week Facebook group as well for some more fantastic events over the next week. Hopefully see you at a few more. And yeah, Marasta we all. Itho we all stare. You are all absolute stars. Itho, have a fantastic night, everyone. Thank you so much. Hag agasgueles, martes and nepres and Seythen ma. See you hopefully sometime this week.
Maraz Braz.
Marasta we all.
Agasgueles all.